Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure and honor to have Mr. Shankar Sharma, Vice Chairman and Joint Managing Director of First Global, as our guest speaker today. Shankar Sharma has been called the alchemist of Dalal Street by Forbes magazine. He founded First Global way back in 1990 after quitting Citibank. And he has a brilliant and stellar track record when it comes to Indian stock markets. From my personal interactions and following his comments, research, and statements, he got the IT boom right in the late 90s. Apart from getting the boom, he also got the bust correct, because I think most people get one end of the cycle right. So he got both right, the boom and the bust. And what I the thing which has made a big impression on me was in 2008, 2007, late 2007, 2008, when India was supposed to be more than shining. India was on a stellar orbit. He was the only person who called that India is overvalued, it's time to sell. And history is testimony to the fact that markets corrected very sharply. And I think if my memory is correct, that time nobody on the street was talking about a correction. And he called not a correction, but a plunge. Apart from that, he has many other credit stock picks to his credit, and I'm sure he'll share his thoughts with us today. And thank you for joining us on this call. And as I said, you grew up in a small place called Dhanbad, very near to the place where I grew up. So I just want to, before I talk about markets, I want to ask you about your personal journey, because you have made a transition from gangs of Wasepur to Barbarian at the Gates very successfully. So I'll really appreciate if you can share your thoughts and your personal journey in stock market so far.
Yeah, thank you, Venki. It's a real honor and privilege, to be on this program with you. And of course, Nirmal has been an old friend, and I have nothing but admiration for IFL and for what you guys have achieved. I just value the fact that people like yourselves, young first generation, with no real backing of family money or anything inherited, coming out to a big city like Mumbai and making a name and a business. I mean, that for me counts for a lot.
Thank you, sir.
Because माँ बाप का दिया हुआ education ही होना चाहिए. उसके आगे मेरे को लगता है कि पैसा नहीं देना चाहिए माँ बाप को अपने बच्चों को. You should give your kids good education and then let them go and figure it out for themselves. And that's, at least fortunately for all of our generation, education was what our parents gave us. After that, they said, all right, go out and see if you're that good. Life will give you something. So I'm really privileged to be on this program with, entrepreneurs like yourselves. And it was a real pleasure for me to learn just now, 5 minutes back, that you are from Ranchi, and Ranchi is almost a sister city to Dhanbad. And they were basically the three good cities in the Bihar, unified Bihar of back then.
Unified Bihar.
Yeah, unified Bihar. And I played a lot of cricket in Ranchi, by the way. I must tell you this, okay? So Mekong ground where Dhoni played. Okay, so I played on that ground for the state. So I used to play for for Bihar State. I played on that ground extensively. So it's a great feeling to meet.
Actually, one thing we have in common is Dhoni is from my school.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. So Kapil Dev was from my college. So
okay. So we have two World Cup winners between us.
Yes, exactly. Two captains, both World Cup winning captains, So yeah. So I mean, we are all small town people with big dreams. Like I said, good education. We all were very well educated in Ranchi, in Dhanbad. Or some of them. When I tell people the kind of education was there, they can't believe it was in Dhanbad. I mean, I was educated by American priests who came from Washington, D.C., from Maryland, became missionaries and educated us. The kind of science and technology they taught us back in the 60s, 70s was phenomenal. So all that grounding helps you in life. And I want to just tell people on this program that don't disregard education. I mean, to me, that is the real wealth. And every day, even as we speak, we learn. I mean, I spend 3 hours a night reading, even now. From roughly 9 o'clock till about midnight, I will be reading a book for sure, even while doing other work. So really speaking, for us to come to Bombay was always a dream, at least if you wanted to be in finance. But I remember when I joined Citi in '88, my salary was some 4,000 rupees a month. And after a car loan, it was 2,000 rupees a month. And I said, yaar, itna to yaar taxi driver kamata hai Bombay mein. So, I should be able to, with my MBA and all this grand education, I should be able to make a bit more money. And then I left and I became a trader on the Bombay Stock Exchange floor in 1990. And, again, out of luck more than anything else, Harshad Teji happened just exactly a year later. And, because you were in part of that movement, one, just participated out of sheer luck more than any skill. And, that's then we became members of the Bombay Stock Exchange, which was a dream which was too far out, because when I started business, I had some 7,000-8,000 rupees from Citibank. That was my PF. And Bombay Stock Exchange, if you recall, the membership was 2 crore rupees. Even then, 2-3 crore rupees. I said, yaar, this figure I will never have in my whole life. No chance. I'm condemned to remaining a sub-broker all my life. So, but destiny had different, this thing. But bottom line, it's been great. I mean, I just privileged and lucky to have, just gotten into the business at the right time when markets opened up. India started to attract foreign capital, and all of us were born in that era where we were just because of our birth having happened in the 60s, we were in our prime earning years when the liberalization boom started. And we were, taken up by that big wave. And, the rest of the journey has been, very, very satisfying, to say the least. Yeah. So I'm really honored and privileged to be here.
Thank you so much. Recently just put a tweet out whether ye kya ho raha hai, because markets are going up, economy is not in such a good shape. So there is a divorce between the real world and the stock market. And it is somehow so. And the Indian stock markets, at least for the last 4-5 years, have been share aaya. The share is the EPS growth. Every year we say aaya EPS growth, but unfortunately, at least 2-3 saal se to dikh nahi raha hai.
Correct.
So what are your views on this entire dichotomy, that real world versus the stock market?
So while I've tweeted that, in reality is that when last year the COVID crash happened, okay, and I think on March 23rd, I had tweeted that looks like a very, very good time to buy certain stocks, and I had put out 2 names. I think Zoom and Amazon were the 2 stocks I put out on March 23rd, which, as it in hindsight turned out to be the bottom. But that was not the point. The point is that there is no disconnect. First of all, the market ultimately is a game of rewarding the winners, right? Market doesn't reward the losers, and the winners in this COVID crisis globally and in India have been companies which have benefited from this in a variety of ways. And in India in particular, if you see, the companies that have benefited the most have been, the chemical companies, pharmaceutical companies, to a similar and probably a better extent, the IT companies, because, of work from home, suddenly you had big EBITDA expansions, which otherwise was unthinkable of. So the market has not diverged from the real economy. The market has actually valued companies quite. In fact, I'll tell you personally, this has been, last 12 months has been the most logical bull market I've ever seen. You mentioned 99, 2000, I made money on the way up and I made money on the way down. But the point is, I never even for a second believed what was going on. Okay. It was a totally illogical rally globally, not just India. It's a complete nonsense. Okay. But I'm nobody to question that nonsense. I'll play it. I don't have to believe it. Okay. So this time, every single stock that went up, you could justify it based on logic, data, and fundamentals. You tell me in the last 12 months, any stock that has gone up 3, 4, 5 times, can you not look at their businesses and see the numbers having gone ballistic, or a strategic shift in business from China to India? There have been sound reasons. So this I have found to be, in my career, probably the most logical bull market I have played. Not even for a moment have I felt scared playing this bull market. 99, 2000, my heart was in my mouth. I remember that while playing it. This time it wasn't the case. So I continue to believe that we are still in a bull market for all the beneficiaries of the problem, because the problem is not going away. That's the main point. It is to expect that this problem is just going to vanish. I don't think that is a valid assumption. I think this is a serious problem. It is not a flash in the pan SARS virus or what we saw in, several. It's a different animal this time. And, again, it's my belief that there are no short things to counter it. Because the vaccine, I've got my vaccine. Okay, so I've taken 2 shots. Dubai fortunately has done a good job. But to say, have I now got the confidence of being able to go out, with complete freedom of mind? Sorry, no chance, no way. Okay. Today, in fact, we lost an employee a couple of days back, very sad. And today we got to know another employee, he's at least okay. But he has already got COVID 6 months back. This is the second time he's getting it. So there are no precedents here. We don't know where we are going. Therefore, to bet on the domestic economy plays is still a foolhardy thing. I don't think that's going to be that simple. So betting on banks, betting on NBFCs, betting on domestic autos, I think we need to be very, very careful on that front. But otherwise, I don't think there is a big disconnect between the market and the economy.
So essentially what you're saying is anything which is export-oriented linked to the global economy because of shortages should do well. And recently you talked about commodities also.
Yeah. So commodities have been another, that's been quite a bizarre trade to say the least. We are getting paid. Back in that good old days, which is what I mentioned in the interview today. And we wrote an article also recently. Basically, we're getting huge backwardation in tin, maybe in nickel, you're getting 60% annualized, yield on backwardation. That means if the commodity remains flat, you will gain 60% at the current rate of backwardation. It is absolutely insane. And this was reminding me of a trade in ITC that I did in 96, when ITC was being heavily shorted by the speculators because it had that problem of
tax.
Yeah, exactly. And everybody has shorted ITC. And I was holidaying in Shimla. I remember that. And my trader called me on the trunk call, at the hotel reception. And I said, "Why are you disturbing holiday?" He said, "Sir, 40 rupiya unda badla ho raha hai ITC mein. Aur bhav tha kuch 300 rupiya. So per settlement, 40 rupees, 15-day settlement, that means 80 rupees. That means you are going to get back 1,000 rupees or so in 1 year against the 300-400 stock price." I said, "What nonsense is this? This cannot last." It was so obvious a trade. So I bought it. I made a lot of money. But the principle still remains the same, that to get this kind of backwardation you see in commodities clearly tells you one thing, that the whole world is short, hugely short in commodities. So it is like a huge short squeeze which is going on right now. When that happens, anything can happen. Crazy things can happen. I think that is where the commodity cycle is. We have liked commodities for the last 12 months. We have owned it in our funds, in our PMS. We made a lot of money. I don't think that trade is over. I don't think it's over.
But I just want to ask you one question. And typically, a commodity squeeze that happens, like 60% unda badla, then the trade evaporates also very fast. It's not that it's a beginning of a gigantic long-term.
No, I agree with you. I agree with you. It may not be the beginning of a gigantic move, but unda badla is only one of the factors. The other factor, that's a more like, let's say, short-term technical factor or a big immediate move up. Okay. But that's not what we are basing our view on. Our view is that because of the massive stimulus unleashed by the Fed, which is roughly, I think, numbers vary about 20, 30%, 35% of GDP. Some crazy number. We don't even know.
Some crazy number, yes.
Yeah, it doesn't fit in a calculator. So if those are the kinds of things you're going to run at, there has to be a side effect to that kind of medicine. It's a strong medicine. There cannot be a strong medicine without a massive side effect. And the side effect will be borne by the currency market. So you can see the dollar. The dollar will take the brunt of that. When the dollar starts to fall, obviously on the other end of the seesaw are your commodities. So because everything is priced in dollars. So if the dollar falls, commodities go up, which is, if you recall, exactly what happened in 2003-04. So when the US stimulated in the wake of the dot-com bust, there was again down, obviously nowhere close to the current stimulus, but it was a stimulus, and at least rate cuts were there. There were no cash stimulus, but there were massive rate cuts. The dollar fell, and then you had a big multi-year bull market, where oil went up to 150 from, I think, about some 20, gold went up from 250 to 1500. So I think in some senses, you are seeing a repeat of that happening. So the Unda Badla is only one factor.
Fair enough. Fair. Absolutely fair. So you say that again, this gold prices going up, iron ore, we saw coal, we saw all kind of commodities, all metals have done well. But crude, you believe crude will again go back to 150, 200? Because now this electrification of the world is happening in a rapid fire.
It's a good question, Venki. And I'll tell you, everybody asks me this question. And I have very, very divided loyalties. I live in Dubai, which always benefits when crude is high. But I'm an Indian, which always suffers when crude is high. So I don't know what the correct answer is. So my diplomatic answer is 65 to 70 mein na India ko problem hai, na hi Dubai ko koi loss. So I hope and I pray that 65, 70 is a fair price for Dubai and the Gulf region to generally benefit. So there is no rise in taxation or indirect tax, which hits me as a consumer. And for India, it's a manageable number. It's not a hugely problematic. But anything 100 plus is a problem.
3 digit is a problem, yes.
Exactly.
I just want to ask you one thing. See, you have been a person who has spotted all big shifts in the market in advance. So as we speak, all our viewers will be, this is one question which has come to me in advance. The second question I'll ask you in the end. But what is a big shift or big thing our viewers can benefit from you, directly from you?
Right. So big shift in my view are, if you talk India, are chemicals.
Okay.
I think, and by the way, it's not a new trade for us. So I have bought chemical companies from 2013, 14. Out of, again, it was largely luck. Yeah, that was largely.
See, I hold you the luck part of it separately, because I think today only you wrote an article about luck. So I have a view that luck happens to people who work hard, or it's like where preparedness meets opportunity. You can't brush off everything luck. So I think
that's a fair point. But our buying chemical companies in 13, 14 came out of just understanding the China factor, that there is a big pollution drive, anti-pollution drive in China. And, and because of that, they're shutting down capacities, and that will raise prices of end products. So all these companies, if you take Atul Industries or you take Deepak Nitrite, and there were a whole slew of chemical companies were trading at multi-year lows. After the 2008 crisis, that sector had not recovered at all. And the recovery began in 2013-14, and it continues to be very strong. But I think now that is a different ballgame in terms of what we can expect in the future. And because more the companies and even US companies we speak with tell us that China is really in the blacklist. So, Dow Chemicals, doesn't want capacities and raw materials and inputs coming from China. They would prefer to have Indian partners making it. That in my view is a major, let's say a big trend out in the future. And this is for chemical after chemical after chemical. It only depends on our companies, how much capital they can put to work and build capacities. I think the business is humongous. In some sense, API is also the same kind of move you're seeing. So I believe and API is also chemicals at the end of the day, it's nothing but chemicals on a broad basis, the same family. I think chemicals, APIs belong to the same broad trade of an anti-China trade benefiting India. I think broadly, if we buy a basket of good companies, we should make serious money.
So which is a basket? Any some names you can share?
So there are many companies. There is Alkyl Amine, there is Deepak Nitrite, there is Atul Industries, there is, Aarti Industries, there is Aarti Drugs, there is Laurus. There are 20, 25 very good companies in the space. You can take your pick. But I think, and again, who knows which will execute better. So buy 5, 10 of them. We don't know who will be the best one, but we should hedge our bets, buy 5, 10 of the best ones and let them run. That's it.
And coming to this next question about value versus growth, I know that you will give an answer saying that neither, the very famous line of yours, which I'll repeat, you have said in public that you're neither a bull nor a bear. Although people call you a bear, and you say you are just a person who goes with the trend. So I want to ask you, with a big debate happening between value and growth, and there are people who come and say this growth companies, high quality companies, and this and that. And you, at least, I give you full marks. You have been transparent and say that I don't care about value, I don't care about growth, I don't care about quality. If the trade is there to make money, I'll do it. And this is a very honest and I would say 100 on 100 statement. But at this point in time, when the world is so massively divided between value and growth, and do you think India value play is possible? Because PSU is one space where there is value, but nothing seems to be happening.
So value can be defined many ways. One is the cheap price to book, cheap price to earnings and all that. The other way to probably look at value is also companies which have not gone up much over a few decades. So if you look at many commodity companies, commodity stocks, they have been poor performers over 5-10 years because of the cycle not having been good. Therefore, in real terms, those stocks have become cheap. If a stock was, let's say, $100 or 100 rupees in 2010, it is still 100 or maybe 120. Adjusted for an inflation of 5%, is more like 50 or 60 rupees today. So it has become cheap in relative terms just because of the time correction. So that is another area of value. It is my belief that you will make more money buying at least some components of value than growth, because you are going to see inflation without any doubt. I mean, I'm pretty clear. And the commodity bull market, and by the way, it is not only hard commodities or industrial commodities, even soft commodities, food commodities. We have gotten used to cheap food. It's no longer that cheap. It is rearing its ugly head, quite rapidly now. So corn or wheat or sugar and everything is just, rallying up. Inflation is a necessary corollary to that. I mean, it's a given. Once you have that, then higher valued stocks where the P multiples are very high will be the first casualty, because higher interest rates mean lower P multiples. Rest everything being equal in finance. This is a simple equation, right? Once you have a higher interest rate and therefore a lower P multiple, you should start to look where are the high P multiples in the market. And it's very clear where the high P multiples are. They are basically your FMCG companies. That's where, it's just a no-brainer, and which is why we have not owned any of them in our PMSs for the last 12 months. Zero, nothing. Because our view was two factors. Because we saw the dollar debasement from February, from April, May last year, which means commodities go up, which means inflation eventually will go up, which means rates will go up. If all those things happen, high P multiple stocks will derate. Okay, you can see they have all derated in the last 12 months. There's been the worst space to be in has been Hindustan Lever or Asian Paints or all this category of stocks. And that is because of this one reason. Second reason, again, very important, is because of the adoption of online. So when e-commerce, which normally would have taken 10 years to reach a certain point, took only, I think, 3 weeks to reach there because of COVID. Now, e-commerce is a different ball game for FMCG companies. You know why? I'll tell you why. When you go to a retail shop, okay, a Hindustan Lever shampoo will be at the eye level. Okay, a Sunsilk you will find, if you are, let's say, between 5.5 and 6 foot tall, the shelf is measured at that average level. You will find all those brands at that eye level, because those shelves cost the most. Those shelves cost the most for an FMCG company. Can a Venki shampoo or Shankar Sharma shampoo afford it? No. A Lever can afford it. So a Lever will buy that shelf, put its products there so that people go there eye level. Who nobody wants to bend. People are lazy. Okay. They buy it, put it in the cart and they go. The lowest shelves are the cheapest products. On the same shelf, you go down, you will find it 20%, 30% cheaper. But very few people can bend. Okay. But in e-commerce, there is no shelf. Everybody is flat. The world becomes flat when you come to a screen on a mobile screen. And in fact, then store brands come to the fore. So you can see, go to Grofers, you'll find Grofer Atta. If you search for Atta, Grofer Atta will come before any other Atta will come. So the world has changed for FMCG companies in many ways, largely bad. And therefore, high P multiple companies in an environment where you are going to see higher inflation, higher interest rates should be avoided. I mean, that's at least my view as of the moment this conference is happening. So one should be very, very mindful of not buying high P companies in an era of higher inflation.
Interesting. I have an audience question, which I'm sure you like to answer this. A gentleman is asking this question. I don't understand chemical and pharma business. So should I not buy? Because Warren Buffett says only invest in those companies or the businesses which you understand. Or should we play the trend?
So, first of all, I'm not a Warren Buffett fan. So, I mean, Again, to be clear, we have all learned a lot from him. You know, he's been a great teacher to us when we were starting our careers, but there are the time and a place, and
absolutely,
you know, his time was in the 90s. That's no longer relevant. So we have moved on. Let's put it this way. To answer your question, you don't understand pharma and chemicals. I completely agree with that. That is a hard industry to understand. Therefore, don't go and put 100% of your money into that. Okay. So I always say this, that when you're not clear in entirety what the future lies for an industry, but it broadly looks okay, put some money into it. Put some money, even 5% or 10% of your disposable capital, you put into it. If you put that 10% into 10 of these companies, they're not going to go to zero. For sure, 100%. There's no chance. What's the worst that can happen? You lose 10% on the portfolio. Of your portfolio, you lost 1%. It's a risk worth taking. Because the sector momentum is so good, the economics are so good, even if you don't understand it deeply, put a bit of capital, and then when your capital is working, your mind will work even better. Then you will make sure you go and learn more things. You will seek out people who know these industries. And then you will be able to educate yourself. But at the same time, you have got your foot in the door, you are participating. So don't look at investing as a binary, that either I have to buy fully or I don't have to buy. I don't believe in that at all. If you like something without 100% certainty, take a bit of exposure.
Very nicely put. And one more person is asking a question, again, about Warren Buffett, but linked to that. Sir, what is your view on consistent compounders? Because whole last year, maybe not now, whole of last year, there is a fashionable word used called consistent compounders. And those were the all so-called FMCG high price shares. Already, I know that you have shared your view on FMCG and the high multiple, but just your views on this so-called consistent compounders, because these stocks have given compounded returns over a long period of time.
No, that's a good question. And I think it's a myth with no data at all, with no basis. And I wish I could share a couple of slides, which I don't have, but I can share it verbally. So let's go back to Warren Buffett again. And because he was the person who invented this school of investing, right? That was his school of investing. It's not without merit, but it is not with so much merit that we have to follow it blindly. And I'll give you some examples. So Coca-Cola was his most storied investment. We all know Warren Buffett because of Coke, right? Coke and Buffett are like literally, joined at the hip. The data is very, very clear and very telling. From 1993 up until now, Coke is up 8 times. Okay? The S&P 500 is up 12 times. And Pepsi is up 30 times. So Coke, forget about being a consistent compounder, has not even managed to beat the S&P 500. Forget about beating Pepsi. Pepsi has beaten it by 4 times in stock price returns. That is one of the best examples I give when I'm asked this question, that this is a good, nice story. But the data, unfortunately, is very brutal. And even coming to our Indian compounders, if you see Hindustan Lever from 1998, because I lived through that era, it did not take out its high till 2010. Right, Venki? 12 years.
This is 100%. This is the ultimate data which I also share with people, saying that it was HLL. When we started a career, at least I started a career, people say buy Hindustan Lever and forget, fill it, shut it, forget it.
Yeah, and then we were made to forget it for 12 years, 12 long painful years, right? So Hindustan Lever is one case, but Bata is another company. If you look at Bata, I think from 1994 till 2005 or something, maybe 10, 11 years, it was at the same price, 40 rupees. Same absolute price, 40 rupees. ITC is another very good example. Okay, so it's been a dog. It had a brief good
period. Now ITC is a big dog.
A big dog, absolute dog. And then there are, so in this Asian Paints is an outlier. But again, remember, for one outlier, there are 10 others which don't confirm the theory. So in investing, please don't fall prey to lazy opinions. I always say this to people. Don't form lazy opinions. It is 5-minute job to analyze the data. Today, data is available on a mobile app. आप देख लो जाके हिंदुस्तान लीवर का 30 साल का अपना प्राइस ग्राफ आपको पता ही चल जाएगा ना what are the returns. Look at Coke. Go and see the Coke price. How long does it take? 5 minutes for any investor today to get this data. Don't believe the advisor or us fund managers or Venki or Shankar Sharma. Forget about us. This is pure data talking. Go and see the data. Nothing is a consistent compounder. They have periods. They have periods of good periods, which we in marketing extrapolated to cover the entire life. But that's not true. And I can give you 5 more examples, but suffice it to say, don't fall prey to these things. They have good periods. They have terrible periods in which 3 years, 5 years, 8 years, they don't do anything at all. I mean, another good case in point could well be HDFC Bank. Okay. Now, HDFC Bank is a stock, we have loved from 96 onwards, that's a bank. हम तो उसको घर का bank समझते हैं because, really the whole top to bottom, almost like, at founder level. HDFC Bank remained flat for nearly, it had a good move in the beginning after the listing of 96. And I think from 97 till 2003 years, the stock price was flat at 90 rupees. Okay. Now, 3 years may not seem like much in hindsight, but 3 साल stock नहीं चलता है ना. तो बहुत पेनफुल होता है, बहुत पेनफुल. It is hugely painful. And in fact, उसका move कब start हुआ मैं बताता हूँ. When we had a conference in 2000, and Aditya Puri presented, and I'll show you the chart the day of the conference. And that is the time from 90, it went to 200 in a matter of, I think, 20 days. But that is after 3 years of painful sideways movement with no movement. We all now believe that HDFC Bank हर साल 25% दिया है. Correct? See, look at the data. That is the lazy opinion. But बीच में 3 साल कुछ नहीं हुआ है. And 3 साल कम नहीं होता है, boss. 3 साल बहुत painful होता है.
There's one more question. So basically, you said your chemicals, pharma, anything outward looking at a good valuation is a good place to be in, including technology.
Yeah, so I mean, IT tailwinds are strong, that we all know. They all look good. And the other interesting thing that has happened is IT has expanded beyond just the main big 4. Now you have second level also, which are in good size, good shape, to be able to win reasonable size deals. And one more thing I must mention, which is very important, that IT is the sector which taught the word corporate governance to us. Before that, that word did not exist. Okay. This is a sector, and notwithstanding Satyam, which is an outlier again, but otherwise, this sector has been the cleanest, best managed sector in our entire history of India. Okay. Now, this sector, because of the success of the big 4, the governance has percolated to even the second and the third tier companies. It has become a cultural motto of the industry itself. There will be some bad eggs, but by and large, accounting is good. Promoters are good. They are not scamsters. No, I mean, take a look at Happiest Minds. Okay. When the stock listed, I said, I'm buying this stock. Now, why am I buying this stock? Why? Because I have known Ashok Soota for 25, 30 years. Okay. He was my senior in MBA. I have known him. He's the most ethical man I can ever imagine. Okay. In a dirty industry like IT hardware, when I started my career in HCL in 80s, he built it without bribing any PSU. Okay.
That's a big achievement.
Yes, big achievement. So I will trust that man blindly. He will run a great, clean company. The stock has gone up 3 times in the last 6 months' time. I never expected it, but I bet on the business, second, on the governance. If both are in place, you have to make money. So I think IT is a great space to be in.
But IT, so you talked about large caps. So what are the mid cap names? You talked about Happiness Mind. Will you like to share some other names also? Because most of our viewers will be interested in.
So again, I don't want to give recommendations because that's not really
No
wise.
recommendations. I think I'll add the disclaimer.
This is what we like right now. But I mean, this is not that, sir, aapne ye bola tha, ye doob gaya. That is possible. We are professionals. We can deal with it. That's our job. So, there are many companies, Persistent Systems, Tata Elxsi, the name. They've done phenomenally well in the last, few months' time. Many companies, Birlasoft, lots and lots of mid-tier, second-tier, third-tier IT names. I think the whole sector is very good.
And tell me one thing, what about PSU oil and gas? Do you think that because many people are talking about divestment and there's a big thing that will happen to unlock PSU values?
So this divestment is like your that every year EPS growth.
Share
aayega. This is a good share, but Bagar doesn't come. So, in any case, my view on divestment is very different. And I must share this because my view is that these are great companies. And, I'm sure you interacted with many of these PSU managements as we have. In my view, quality of management is excellent, to say the least. And again, we are all products of PSU parents.
Yes.
And I have a bias in my mind, however irrational, that managers are very good. They are meddled around too much by the politicians. Otherwise, BPCL, HPCL, I've met them when they just, went public, not in an IPO, but they just listed the stocks in the 90s. The quality of management was outstanding, to say the least. Or if you take a bank like SBI, all our Citibank top brass was SBI. Okay, all of them were from SBI. All of them. 100% Citibank, the flashy Citibank was all SBI. That is the level of depth of training that these organizations built over 70, 80 years have. To sell BPCL for 50,000 crores or I don't know what, it is a crime. Are you telling me you cannot run 15 companies? Are you telling me we are so incapable? We have IIMs, we have thousands of MBAs. We can't find 15 good managers and 15 good boards and not interfere with them and make them run with proper incentives. What no? I don't buy the logic of selling is a good thing. No country sells their crown jewels. These are crown jewels. These are the assets that help you in troubled times. उसको आप फुकट में जाके बेच दोगे 70 साल में कंपनीज बनी है साहब आप उसको बनाओ ना you empower them, hire good managers, pay them 5 crore salary, they will make it, no? Because the kind of real estate, the kind of strategic advantages these companies have cannot be measured in rupees. You cannot put a rupee value to intangibles. So I don't believe in divestment at all. And मैं भगवान से प्रार्थना करता हूं कि नहीं बिके ये सब कंपनी.
लोग बहुत दुखी हो जाएंगे. सब बैठे हुए हैं. One more question people have, again, one of the viewers is asking, what is your view on new age companies like Info Edge, FinTech, so-called? I think now Zomato, Swiggy, everybody is getting listed.
No, so Info Edge is obviously a good company, of course, very expensive to say the least, but I think that's also in part because of Zomato embedded valuation in that. I'm very curious to know how Indian market will react to loss-making companies. So the Swiggies and Zomatos and Nykas and all these companies being talked about, we will need to see whether India will be as accepting of loss-making companies. Because these companies, to make profit, to justify valuations through a normal PE is a long way down the road. I mean, it's not going to happen easily. So I think US market would have been more logical, but given the fact that there are bigger brand names in India, they should list in India. But we'll see how the market reacts to them.
But that's an interesting point, because as of now, all of us think that markets have become very evolved and we will be able to handle this.
We believe so, but till it's trading, we don't know. It's all guesswork.
Correct. That I agree. I think. There's one more point of yours I want to ask you is that you spoke and rather wrote an article about how AI tech, machine learning will change the entire investment world. And you gave a very nice analogy of hockey, which I really liked because I've seen hockey for many years and I felt very sad. Now India is winning, so I feel happy, but I've seen India getting brutally losing matches. So what is your view? Because how will the entire art profession change in the next 5 years?
So I think, in so many areas of life, AI is already into it. So for example, if you look at analyzing X-ray plates, okay, there has been enough amount of training done of machines which can analyze X-ray plates better than the radiologist. Why? Because the machine is not biased. The machine does not have a mood. The machine doesn't have a quarrel at home. Correct. The machine doesn't fall sick. Okay? None of those problems are afflicting the machine. Yes, what the machine does not have is judgment. We agree, right? But you can train it to become smart in judgment by feeding it with thousands and thousands of X-ray plates. Okay? In a machine which is well coded, which can recognize patterns, after if you put in, say, 1 lakh such images into the machine, it can tell you far better than any radiologist what the problem is. Because it will have the same consistent lens through which to view everything with no mood swings, no variations. Being consistent in investing is as important. Where we all fail in investing is when our own yardsticks keep changing. Any system well constructed and followed well will beat the markets hand down. Okay? Problem is we tend to fiddle around with our methods because of the market saying this or udhar sun liya, TV pe dekh liya, ye report pad liya. We have now started to go into the realms of wild speculation and third-hand opinion instead of following your method. If you follow a well-coded method, you will beat all experts. I can tell you that much. You can beat us also. There's no big deal. Problem is, as human beings, we are not meant to follow systems. Okay, we will always want to find some shortcut, do this, do that. That's when it breaks down. The machine makes us, it's like hiring a personal trainer. Everybody knows you should diet well. Everybody knows you should lift weight. Everybody knows you can see on YouTube 5-minute video, you will know everything. But why do we hire personal trainer? Because wo baith ke bolta hai 7 baje utho. You know, now you put on your sneakers, go for the jog. I'm waiting for you. After you come out of the jog, I will do. So it is that discipline. He puts a system into your life and we are willing to pay money for that system. वरना left to us, हम लोग 7 बजे अरे यार आज तो रात को बहुत लेट हो गया था, अभी छोड़ो यार, आज छोड़ देते हैं, कल करेंगे ना बॉस, तो ये कल कभी आता ही नहीं है. The machine, you take it as a personal trainer. It puts a method to something which may not seem very rocket science, but the method it will follow like a slave. It will not let you waver. If you follow a method, follow good training, you will become fit. Same is in investing. So machine learning is nothing but your wisdom getting coded. So my 30 years of learning will get coded into the machine. Then the machine, and now we are working on some very advanced aspects of it, building really, stuff that very few people in the world have made, where the machine is really generating things based even better than what we might have generated, based on self-learning. So machine learning is supervised and unsupervised, and that's a different discussion. There are many ways of doing it, but self-learning is like an adaptive system where it will figure out ways out of a maze on its own. In markets, we are training them to be able to do that. Okay. So in my view, when I look at today what we do and what we did 20 years back, it's almost the same as the hockey. That we are still playing the old way, the dribbling on the grass and all that, while the game is just changing dramatically in front of our eyes. So in my view, well-coded chess machine will beat a grandmaster. It's a fact. We all know that. I think the same will happen in the markets also. Interesting.
So one last question is that, so what is your view on index? So basically then effectively it's, if people don't have access to smart systems or so that kind of computing power, then for the retail investor, the common man, index investing is the only other option. So are you a believer of that so-called Vanguard model in India?
No, I don't believe in the Vanguard model itself, okay? Because that is meant for a developed market with ultra low interest rates and far less shocks to the macroeconomic system. Okay? India is still a third world country, developing market, far more fragile macroeconomics. You will have massive ups and massive downs. The index will not prevent your downs. You see what I'm saying? Index will give you the up. It will not protect you on the down. Smart money managers will give you the up or thereabouts, but they'll protect you on the down. Farak wo hai. People don't understand this about ETF. ETF is not going to protect you when market fall 30, wo bhi 30 girega.
वो भी गिरेगा 30 यार.
वो भी 30 गिरेगा साहब. But अगर मैं 10 गिरा और चलने में मैं 30 नहीं चला, मैं चलने में 25 चला, 28 चला, good enough ना boss. But as smart money managers, if you are smart and you know the risk of investing and you do some degree of understanding, you can prevent a big drawdown. You have beaten ETF hands down. As simple as that. And ultimately investing, I can tell you this much, Venki, my learning is prevent the big losses. बाकी तो पैसा बनता ही बनता है boss.
Correct.
बस
Absolutely.
बस हिट विकेट मत हो जाओ, रिटायर्ड मत हो जाओ, विकेट पे टिके रहो, रन 100% बनेगा ही बनेगा. As active fund managers, good one will prevent that retiring hurt.
Absolutely correct. Good one.
Sir,
one last question.
Yeah.
What are your views on small caps? Because recently I read an interview where you said that small caps are still undervalued in India. Because if you look at data, we are just about to caught up with the Jan 2018 peaks, where the Nifty has done quite well.
I agree with you. Yeah. They were in a huge bull market in 17 and then 18, 19 were a washout, and from 20 they started washout, absolute washout. I think it's a good space. I think it's a good space. There is no doubt about it. Again, I always say this, mid-caps maybe one needs to be very careful. It is like joining the mafia, that you can only enter, you cannot exit. So just be very, very, very careful in mid-cap or in particular small caps.
Excellent. I thought that you'll say this in Hindi, the way you put your job ad. कि ऑफिस खुलने का समय मालूम 8 बजे, जाने का समय सब भगवान मालिक. And one last question, one of viewers is asking, can you suggest some good, I see you're such a voracious reader, can you recommend some books? Somebody is asking.
Okay, so there are many books here. One of the books that Devina recommends is Thinking Fast and Slow, which is a great book on biases. Yeah. Invisible Gorilla is a great book. I just finished reading a book called Trend Following, which is a great book, on how to build systems, which you can automate. Then there is, I don't know, there are many. I'm just reading a book on General Electric. So again, investing, you need to have a wider selection, not just buy books only about investing, but if you know about corporate. I remember, I can tell you this as a personal example, that when I did my MBA, I was very clear. There was a lot of workload. We were sleeping only 4 hours a night, okay, on the average. A brutal workload. But even in that, I was very clear that I will spend 2 hours in the library and read all the previous bound copies of Business Week, Forbes, Fortune from 1930, 1940, 1950, 1960, 1970. तो मैं बैठ के रात को पढ़ता था वो सब कि IBM का क्या था 1940 में. What was it doing in 1940? What was General Motors in 1950? You're reading the magazines of that time, right? Not in hindsight.
Correct.
It gave you a lot of insights on how companies were perceived then and what changed that 40 years later you didn't want to buy 100 shares of IBM. So learn about companies' histories. Don't just buy books on investing. That is only an outcome of knowledge. So, and there, of course, Warren Buffett letters are great. There's still a lot of value in them. Don't believe everything, but, at least implement some part of it in your life.
Thank you so much for such an interesting and engaging conversation. It was wonderful talking to you. And I look forward to more conversations with you. And thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.